Hey, I'm Sean Kanungo. This is another episode of Dangerous Ideas. We break down concepts and frameworks that will change your life. Hey everybody, my name is Sean Kanungo. This is another episode of Dangerous Ideas, episode number 13. We made it past 12. What a dream. You know, this podcast is really about breaking down concepts that will change your life, change your business, change your career, but most importantly, it will change your life. And in this podcast, we break down all these concepts, dangerous ideas, and then we have guests. And the beautiful part about this is that we often don't even introduce the guest or their background or go through an interview. That's a different show, to be honest with you. But I'm really excited today. We have Faaiza Ramji. She's an entrepreneur. This is almost too much, but she's a marketer. She's an entrepreneur. She's building field notes. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. It's fun.
Now, not introducing yourself in a podcast, like not going through an entire interview. Are you comfortable with that? Like just going straight into the concepts?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like the reason I like hanging out with you is because we just talk about random things all over the place.
Totally. And that's why I wanted to have you on the pod.
Thank you.
It's because I love the conversations that we have about marketing, life, direct to consumer, building, brands. Like it's awesome. So I'm super excited about this conversation. And I have a whole bunch of concepts that I have ready for you as a marketer. And I'm going to start with the first one. And this one is the idea that irrationality is a superpower. The ability to be irrational is actually a superpower. Now, let me break this down. You know, today we live in a world full of data, algorithms, we're leveraging generative AI. We have everything now at our fingertips. We are more incentivized than ever before to be optimized, to be standardized, to be streamlined. And I believe that in this optimized world, that those that think outside of the box, that are way more irrational, that are coming up with ideas that the data won't show, is actually a superpower. You can call this innovation. You can call this, radical marketing or whatever you want. But to me today, this idea is a superpower. And if you look at some of the best companies in the world, they truly the transformative companies, they don't make sense. Red Bull is a great example. Doesn't really taste that good. It's a kind of an energy drink. I don't know if it's a coffee. It's a weird combination. It doesn't make sense. It's so popular. One of the greatest examples over the last 5 years is Liquid Death. Being in the DTC space, like it's bottled water, which that in itself doesn't make sense. And then plus it has this crazy marketing. It doesn't have a influencer attached to it, yet they're all over the place. It doesn't make sense why it's so popular. Irrationality is a superpower. And as a marketer, I want to know what you think about this.
Okay, well, since you appreciate is it left curves or curveballs? Curveballs.
Curveballs, yeah.
Yeah. Since you appreciate curveballs, I'm going to throw one at you where I actually think the examples that you gave and going down that same path of thinking, everything is rational. It just may not be rational to you. And everybody has a pattern of thought that they follow to do something. And as long as they can follow the path of their thinking, they will get to an outcome that they can test and iterate and kind of move forward on, right? Might make them move backwards sometimes. Actually, that's a good thing. But I think we often confuse irrationality with unconventionality.
Right. Okay.
So when I think about like Liquid Death, for example, right? Great example. And it's funny, I was just reading something about them and I was wondering the same thing. I'm like, there's 150 brands of water in the US right now. How is it that these guys are crushing it compared to anybody else? Well, it wasn't actually irrationality. It was the fact that they wanted to appear cool in front of music audiences, at concerts, at events. And so they were like, well, bottled water always looks really responsible, really clean, really nice, really friendly. How do we look badass like a band?
Right.
So they made themselves look like a band. They put themselves in a can that looks like a beer, but it's not a beer, it's just water. And then they doubled down on events. So it's like, it's still very rational. It's just not conventional. And I think that is actually a bit more important. That's where like curiosity really comes in. That's where trusting your gut comes in. But your gut is still founded on some sort of rational logic.
So I think you you've busted this concept a little bit, and I love it because I guess when I say irrational, I am picturing a whole bunch of people around a boardroom pitching these ideas. They're putting it up on the wall, and somebody throws out the idea of liquid death. We should call this thing liquid death. We should enter into into this crowded water space. Like, to me, that would sound irrational. But you're saying is that it is actually rational, is just unconventional.
Yeah, and it's just a bit wild, right? Like, think about it. I think what's cool about AI and data and all these things is, like, they still require the human curiosity and the human creativity to actually be dangerous, right? And I don't mean dangerous in an irresponsible way. When I think about it, it's like, okay, how do I know that something is working? I look at a metric. The metric could be as simple as revenue. It could be as simple as how many newspaper articles are written about me. It could be whatever. It could be as sophisticated or as simple as you want, but there is a signal that tells you that something is doing something.
Right.
So when you throw out wild ideas and, in this boardroom scenario, there's people who are making decisions based solely on the data, which to me is making a decision about the future by looking in the past.
That's right.
And then there's somebody who's ignoring all of that and saying, no, based on what I know about people or about behavior or about whatever, thanks to my curiosity and my creativity, I have this other idea. But somebody's still going to make you rationalize it in some way. You gotta think about it in a way that makes some sort of sense, even if the sense doesn't feel like the obvious one. And at the end of the day, when I think about me, I've done a lot of dumb things that don't really make any sense in my life. I don't feel bad about any of the ones where I trusted my gut, because I know that my gut was based on some level of rationale.
Right.
Right. The ones where I keep beating myself up over them and I can't get over them are the ones where I went against my gut and I listened to somebody else because I didn't really agree with their rationale.
So are you saying that potentially that these ideas, these new products, new services, new companies that are coming out are not necessarily irrational or came from irrational thought? They're just unconventional.
100%. And I think that's the superpower. And that comes down to, I think, a little bit of confidence, right? There's a lot of people out there where you look at them and you're like, what the hell is this guy talking about? I do not agree with anything this person's saying. But you keep listening and you keep giving them the opportunity to share their point of view. Why? Because there is some logic to how they got there.
Yep.
Right? You just don't agree with it necessarily, which is fine.
Yeah.
You don't need to agree with everything, and everybody's not going to buy every product or buy every idea. But I think the curiosity mixed with the confidence to put it out there, that is the superpower. And true curiosity to me is the biggest superpower.
So when you're in these boardroom situations, and you've been in a ton, whether it's in private sector or public sector organizations, you're around a room, around a table, you're putting out ideas. You've done marketing for so many unbelievable brands and companies. What do you think is really stopping people from, like, picking the bold choice or making something that is outside, or making a decision that's outside of their comfort zone? What do you think is holding them back?
Well, I think there's two things. One is probably their confidence in themselves, because a lot of times people in boardrooms and things like that, they're not the holder of their own destiny. Someone's going to hold them accountable and potentially fire them, or they'll have some sort of negative consequence to the decision. So if they're not super confident in it, they're not going to run with it. But the second is probably it's not easy. If you're going to be unconventional, it's not the easy choice. It's never the easy choice. Right. The easy choice is just to find the winning playbook, keep doing it. Just do it better. Do it with more ad spend, do it with whatever. But that's the easy way to do something. The difficult way to do something is doing it in a way that's different than everybody else.
Yes.
And that's oftentimes the slow game. But who cares?
No, I love that. And I've been talking a lot about this more recently, is that, innovation requires you to do the hard thing, like do something that's difficult, embrace what I call the darkness. Like you have to be able to sit there and be willing to be the joke, be willing to make a bold decision in a world of uncertainty, which is really important. I actually think that the number one thing that holds people back is their upward mobility, their status, and their bank account at the end of the day. Like we're holding on to our status our titles, our job, and we make really mediocre decisions because of that. Because nobody will ever question a mediocre decision. Nobody will ever get mad at making a mediocre decision, and that's what we hold on to. And I think that's the biggest. If you can remove that, that's how you get really innovative ideas.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And you said something a while ago, not to be like a Sean Kanungo fangirl, but you said something a while ago. I saw something that you put out about caring what people think, right?
Yeah.
And how that prevents us from doing, I would say, unconventional things as well. Like if you had, when you were a little kid, had said to your parents, "Hey, I want to be a keynote speaker and a disruptor when I grow up," they'd be like, "Whatever, just get your accounting degree and let's move on here, pal."
100%.
Right? Because that's easy. It's understood. If you told your friends what you're doing, like, it's really interesting to me when you have a different career path. How many friends ask about your work versus how are your kids? How is your, something that they can relate to that is easy for them to ask about because it's important to them, so it must be important to you.
Yeah. No,
right?
It's interesting because I think people still curious, but they don't understand it.
Yeah.
And I was and doctors might get mad at me after this, but I love, God bless doctors. They're doing God's work. I could never be a doctor, but being a doctor is a path of certainty. You know exactly how to become a doctor. It's like written. There's a playbook. And to me, it's actually harder to do something like being an entrepreneur or being an artist or being a creative or getting into music. It is a way harder path because it's way more dark, right? Even though being a doctor is so coveted, it is difficult. I'm not saying it's not difficult, but it's certain. It's there.
Yeah.
And I think we often, I don't know, we put down people that are trying to enter into this space of darkness or do something differently when actually they're having a harder path. So we should embrace those people a lot more.
Yeah, I agree with that. But I also think there's something to be said for, I think the thing about doctors is like there's also what's perceived as a more extreme outcome, right? It's a binary outcome. You either help someone or you further hurt them. So when I'm doing what I do in business, if it takes me longer to get to the good outcome, who cares, right? And I say that there's. Like I always say jokingly, but I'm like, I'm just a marketer. I'm not saving lives. And it's true. So I can afford to take risks. I can afford to take longer. I can afford to be less successful. It's not a binary outcome for me of success or failure. It's a spectrum.
Right.
And I think, when you look down the medical path, for example, doctor is one thing, but look at the researchers. They are doing bold things, but nobody's talking about them because their outcome is not as binary either. It's not that they solve the problem or they don't solve the problem. The problem takes 100 years to solve potentially. So no one cares if they made an incremental notch, but to them, they've taken a bold step to do something that is very different than the current way of addressing that problem.
Right.
And there's a quote that I heard kind of at the beginning of the pandemic, and I literally say it like 5 times a week. And it's by Charlie Munger. And he says, "Show me the incentive, I'll show you the outcome."
Yes.
Right?
Love that.
Any situation that you're in, that's how you can understand someone's rationale. And because people always tell me this about like politicians, they're like, why don't politicians make bolder decisions? Why don't politicians like try to change things? And I'm like, because they're not incentivized to change things. They're incentivized to get reelected.
Yeah.
Right? And who's going to reelect you? The majority, which means the status quo. Exactly. Why would you go against your base if you want it? Because a lot of the work they're doing takes more than 4 years, or I would argue more than 2 years, because for 2 years they're campaigning. So if you want to do something different, who's going to vote you in and let you do the different things? Nobody.
Exactly. And that's why I think, to the Charlie Munger quote is that we need to do a better job at looking at our performance management frameworks, our performance measures, in order to incentivize people to take more shots, to innovate more, to be more bold. And because if we're tied down by the incentives that get us into office or whatever, then we're not going to innovate.
Yeah.
And I believe that one of the ways of incentivizing people to take more shots or to take more risks is to quantify how many risks they're taking, how many learnings they're getting, and put that on a board. Like, how many actual shots are you taking?
Yeah.
And you can bucket them into like really incremental, initiatives or transformational. But that should be the scoreboard, not by taking just the safe route.
Yeah. Well, if you think about, they talk about the time horizon of innovation in business. There's like, you look at things from like a 1 year time horizon, a 2-year, 5-year, 10-year, something like that. And you got to chip away at all those things. So like the 2-year things are what keep the lights on, right? So if you're looking at a salesperson, for example, you'll always hear like, okay, so for me in the liquor world, if I hire a broker or a distributor to represent my product's the hardest one to sell. Yet they are incentivized by commission of total revenue generated for their whole portfolio. How much time do you think they're going to spend on the hard things to sell?
Exactly.
Zero, right? They're going to go after the easy things. What are the easy things? The things that are already selling. Probably less interesting story, less work involved, whatever. But now if you're telling me that you're going to pay a way higher commission on the hard sale, or you're going to, I don't know, give someone a percentage of the company or like something that combines both their short-term need of being able to make money and pay their bills, but also satisfy maybe their curiosity or their entrepreneurial, excitement or whatever. Then you find the right person to fill the role who's going to care about all those metrics.
100%.
Right? So I agree with you about the scoreboard needs to change. The scoreboard can't be, at work, it can't just be revenue for the company.
100%. Well, listen, I think number one, I think we agree that there is now a new, it's not irrationality is a superpower. It's unconventionality.
That's right.
Is that a word?
Well, it is now.
Okay. That is the superpower. So I'm going to give you the second concept.
Okay.
I know you actually texted me. You said, we need to talk about this AI stuff at some point. And I want to get your take on it. But the concept that I'm bringing up here is the idea that doomerism is sexy. And the reason I mention this is because there is an entire category of the world that is talking about the downside of AI and the negative impacts of AI on society, the fact that we need to regulate it, the fact that, to be honest with you, not only regulate it, which I fundamentally agree, but the idea that AI is going to kill us, that it is going to be an existential risk to humans. And I see more and more people talk about this with little to no data, right? They're literally just making these claims with no data. And I feel that if you can't make if you can't make a claim without any data, then it's really just a religious belief. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I see this a lot on social media, where the people that are cynics, the people that are doomers, they are the ones that get the clicks. I mean, our entire media landscape is based on doomerism. You only see the bad, you only see the negative, and that's what people want. That's what gets the clicks. And unfortunately, being a cheerleader is seen as being dumb, and it doesn't get the clicks, okay? Unfortunately. And so I'm just generally an optimist. I'm generally a cheerleader, which makes me look dumber. But that doomerism is sexy, and I see it with AI right now. So what do you think about this concept of doomerism is sexy? And disagree with me a little bit.
I wish I could disagree with you.
Okay.
But I actually fully agree with you on this one. And I am and my sisters, if they were to see this, they would laugh because they know exactly this. Where I'm like I'm headline smart. Okay.
Headline smart.
Yeah. So I know all the headlines, but ask me the details. I know nothing.
Love it.
And we have a lot of conversations.
By the way, that's the vast majority of the world. Okay.
Yeah. The only difference between me and other people is I think I read a lot more headlines.
Right.
So I know a lot more shallow stuff.
Yes.
And it's funny because like when we talk about current events or politics, my sisters will like go deep on something and I'm just like, we're already past the headline. I have no idea what you're talking about anymore. And so for me, again, it kind of goes back to the show me the incentive, I'll show you the outcome. And you said it. People want clicks. People want, like, you're incentivized to get the plus ones on everything. So you have to be eccentric in your view. There's
not even eccentric and negative.
That's right. And you have to be kind of, it has to be negatively outlandish for people to want to click and learn more and think more, or you wanted to try to start a little bit of controversy. Positivity is not controversial, unfortunately. Yeah. But I agree with you about that concept of doomerism is sexy because it's also resisting change, right? People don't want or maybe don't care about what's possible.
Right.
And they want an answer. Like it's the same kind of thing around AI where people are saying, well, how does this exactly work? How does that work? How does this work? Well, we don't know yet. We're inventing it. When the internet first started, do you think people knew exactly what it was going to do? No. We all build it together. And unfortunately, right now, I think what the doom side of me says is that we've become very self-focused. Like we're very individualistic versus being very communal and societal in our thinking. And I think that's a fear, like based on, it's some sort of fear that is causing us to be this way. But I do think that we can make the positivity and the cheerleading sexy again if we can think about things that are outlandishly positive. So maybe that's the problem. Maybe the problem is when we think about the negative, we lean so much towards like the outliers that it kind of is like extra scary. But imagine if you could think of something that's like extra exciting, like something that is as unbelievable, but on the positive side.
Right.
Maybe that would, but maybe we're just not conditioned anymore to think that way.
Yeah, and it is unfortunate. I do want to get your take on the AI thing. I see people on, whether it's on Twitter or other places, where they will share a negative view of AI or the metaverse or whatever, and you'll see a whole bunch of people in the comments and agreeing with them. It's very. I guess what I'm saying, it's very difficult to argue with the person that's the cynic.
Yes.
Right? While it's way easier to disagree with the person that's the cheerleader, because I don't know. I don't know the psychology around that, but I observe as the cheerleader, I fall into that camp of people wanting to debate me on these issues, which I'm happy to debate, but it's like they automatically want that. That's just how they see the world, and maybe that's just the world. We just have cheerleaders and cynics. Maybe that's just the world. Yeah,
it is the world, and because we have all these public forums for people to be sharing those views, I think like begets like. And now the more negativity, right, the more we all jump on the negativity bandwagon because we're all in the same public forums, right? And I also think a lot of it is just people don't know enough, and nobody wants to admit that they don't know enough.
Yes.
Right? Like think about AI right now. The AI has actually been around for a very long time. It's not new. Generative AI is the thing right now that everyone cares about. Oh, this is going to replace my job. This is going to replace my marketing agency. This is going to replace my whatever. No, it's not. It's actually not. It's going to maybe make you be better, right? It's going to force you to level up. It will replace some people, just like, they give all the examples of like the fact that the elevator replaced the guy who cranks the elevator to physically take you upstairs or whatever.
Doorman, yeah.
That is going to happen. But so what? That's not that big of a deal. But if you think about generative AI right now, that's what's occupying all the conversation. But if you look at machine learning, for example, or other forms of AI that people have actually been using for a really long time, they're pretty amazing. Like I worked at a company, an Edmonton-based company, Matricon, that got bought by Honeywell, 10, 15 years ago. I didn't realize that they were a machine learning company.
Wow.
And the reason I say that, and maybe I'm wrong here, so is this like armchair expert? Where's Monica to do the fact check?
There's no fact checkers. Don't worry about it. Yeah.
So when I think about what we did at Matricon, they would collect data. So imagine you're an industrial plant, like a oil refinery. Okay. So your plant is massive. It's potentially located in tons of different places. They collect data off all these sensors so that when an alarm goes off, signaling something unsafe, it can actually start actioning that alarm right away. And it can then start to predict when these alarms are going to be set off. So you can actually prevent alarms and all these things. That's machine learning. Nobody called it that back then. And maybe they did, but nobody cared and nobody understood it. But if they had said, oh, we're selling AI back then, people would have been like, what are you talking about? You're crazy. But now everybody's talking about it. So you have the opportunity to talk about a really small section of it.
So what do you think? Like, as a marketer, leveraging generative AI, I'm sure you've been playing around and using it. Like, tell me where you're at.
Don't embarrass me. Don't embarrass me, Shawn, because now I'm going to embarrass myself, actually, which is that I haven't used a ton of generative AI.
Yeah.
And the reason why is I don't disagree with it. I'm annoyed by it because people are making it seem too simple. Like they're putting a prompt into ChatGPT and then spitting back the answer and not thinking anymore and just giving that as the answer. So like, and I have a friend, and if he's watching this, he will know that I'm calling him out on this, but he'll send me stuff and I'm like, you wrote this ChatGPT, right? And he's like, yeah, how'd you know? And it's because we still need to be smart about what we put into the prompts to generate something unique and valuable. So I like the idea of generative AI. I just don't think it means that we should be lazy. I think it means that we should challenge ourselves even more.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I think just as a generative AI cheerleader, I think you can be an idiot and at some point, not through the first prompt, but by the third or fifth or sixth prompt, you can get some really good answers.
Okay, but you just said you got to go to the fifth or sixth prompt. A lot of people just stop after the first.
Yeah, it depends on what you're using it for. I would assume that the majority of people that are using generative AI for some sort of output are regenerating, they're reframing, they're asking questions in different ways, and then they're getting the responses back. That's how I think most people are probably using it.
Yeah.
I am obviously cheerleader about it. I think it's incredible. I think it's going to change every industry. I think it's going to help reduce the workload, help remove some of the redundant tasks. And just like, for example, I'll give you an example. I had to write a letter of recommendation for somebody, and I had all the core pieces, but I wrote the core, and then I said, hey, make it better. And then I'm like, make it better, make it better, make it better. And then I finished the thing, and I'm like, look it over again, correct all the grammar. Do you know what I mean? Like, so it is truly a unbelievable co-pilot.
Yeah.
Now that's on text. Now, there are other platforms like Midjourney. There's Runway from a video perspective. Like, this stuff is just getting exponentially better every single day.
Yeah.
I mean, I used Adobe Generative Fill today for like a thumbnail, for a YouTube thumbnail. And it's just the greatest co-pilot.
No, don't get me wrong. I'm in the cheerleader camp as well. I also think it's like, it goes into the same category for me. Generative AI is the same category as things like Shopify, for example. We're now making it easy for anybody to launch an e-commerce store. That's incredible.
Yep.
That is incredible. Is it a perfect tool? No. Is it still difficult because you got to go through the marketplace, find your apps, get a developer, whatever? Of course. But we've now made it, we're democratizing people's ability to just be independently able to do what they want to do. And if you think about it, like, everybody is overworked. We know this. Everybody is overworked. They're burnt out, blah, blah. If we can reduce your workload by 10% by getting rid of some of the things, like even just you sitting in front of a blank screen because you don't know where to start with something, and we're able to give you a kickstart through generative AI, which then you have to edit or refine through AI, however you do it, doesn't matter. It's not like we're all of a sudden giving people nothing to do. We're actually just saying, hey, we're going to free up a little bit of space in your brain so that you can actually think better. You can actually come up with better ideas. And that's great.
Totally. The one thing that I've been getting angry about when it comes to generative AI is people's predictions about what this is going to do in the future in terms of the creative field. So I'll give you an example. I listen to a podcast, This Week in Startups, great podcast, Jason Calacanis. Every week they review like new AI tools, and I'm a nerd. I'm always like looking at this stuff. And this week, for example, they reviewed this like AI generated South Park, right? An AI generated show or AI generated music. Now, my belief is that when you are a consumer of a creative product or an artist or a movie, that once you know that this is generated by an AI, automatically you're less into it. You believe that it's less authentic, and because of that, people are going to be able to create so much creative content that the abundance is not going to help it's not like, I just don't believe that a Drake AI track is going to go to number one. I don't believe that.
Yeah.
I don't believe an AI South Park is going to be the best show ever. People appreciate authenticity. They can smell a fake when they see it, and they won't accept it.
What do you think about CGI?
And CGI is fake in a sense.
Yeah.
But it's we know that it's fake, right? We accept the fact that it's fake.
But it's fake, but it's so good. Like, and I don't know that I agree or disagree with your point about the AI creative elements or outputs going to number one or whatever. But I also think when CGI first came out, people are like, this is a fake dinosaur or a fake whatever. And you could tell, and it was like pretty shitty. But when you start to make it better and better, does it potentially open up a different way of creating something in a new category?
It absolutely, okay.
Okay, so maybe there's not going to be...
I like it, okay.
So maybe like the Billboard Top 40 or whatever is not going to have the number one AI Drake track. But maybe there's going to be a whole separate category
100%.
of music, of AI music.
Yep.
And because I do agree with you. I think authenticity is key. And I think there's tools that kind of unlock your ability to convey your ideas better. Somehow right now with where generative AI is and how we're thinking about it, we're thinking about it as like a way to replace your authentic idea. But maybe that's not going to be the case in the future.
It's a great point. I fundamentally agree that there's going to be a new category on this. I guess what I'm trying to say is that we're not gonna enjoy watching the AI Tom Hanks. We're not gonna enjoy listening, and it's cute to listen to AI Drake now. Is the AI Drake on Billboard? Like, it's not.
Yeah, because ultimately we're humans.
Yeah.
And humans connect to other humans through emotion, through like even just personally cheering other people on or whatever it might be. Like, I think that human element is something special. And I think there's a level of irreplaceability with humans, just like how you think that. So I don't disagree with your point either. I guess I just don't know where it's going to go. And I think there's some things that are better off because of AI and some things that'll just be like
100%.
different, but not necessarily better.
I've been thinking a lot about this idea that in a world of abundance where the cost of creativity, the cost of producing media is going down to zero, like high quality media is going down to zero. So when there is abundance, the value accrues to things that are scarce, right? So things that are, I'm trying to think that, what is going to be scarce in this world of abundant media? That's just something that I've been thinking about a lot. I'm obsessed with artificial scarcity. I think it is remarkable to me that these companies like Louis Vuitton, like LVMH, I don't know, it is definitely in the top 10 most valuable companies in the world. I know Bernard Arnault is like the most, as of like, I think Elon is now the richest man in the world, but it flip-flops. Bernard Arnault, CEO of, chairman of LVMH, is the richest man in the world. And to me, it's remarkable because it's just they've just created artificial scarcity, right? And that's from a product perspective, that's tangible perspective. What is the artificial scarcity when it comes to media? That I'm just trying to unlock that. I don't know what that is.
Yeah, I don't know either. I think it's interesting. Like when I used to work in radio, I remember my our CEO said this to me one time. He's like, we just sell air, and he's like, we can make as much or as little air as we want. And I thought that was kind of interesting because I'm like, it's true actually. Like you could make, we value radio stations that don't have advertisements. So we're always like, oh, we want to listen to ad free or whatever. But even the songs themselves are ads if you really think about it. But theoretically, if there was a demand or if you created a product such that people wanted only ad full radio, you could theoretically do the same thing. I can't imagine that would be successful, but you could theoretically create it. But kind of going back to your point around like scarcity versus abundance,
Yep.
That's why I think thought leadership is coming back in style. Like, yeah, we're putting it on TikTok, we're putting it on YouTube, but people watch Mr. Beast talk. Okay? There's only one Mr. Beast.
Right.
There are going to be others like him or in a similar category, but there's only one of him. There's only one Shawn Kanungo. People get you to come out and speak at events. They could play your YouTube channel the whole time if they wanted to. But there is a scarcity in your time. How many of those talks can you do in a year?
Right.
Right? Physically, you can only be in one place at one time. So I think maybe that's why we're leaning towards this thought leadership again. And old is new. So thought leadership used to be the way things were done before. Lead nurturing. If you think about, putting out white papers, YouTube is a new white paper.
Wow. YouTube is the new white paper.
That's the headline for this episode.
That is.
YouTube is the new white paper.
I like that. I like that. No, I agree. And to me, like, that's the reason why I'm not afraid of putting out content. Even though I know people will pay me for a talk, they can just stitch together a whole bunch of talks off LinkedIn or YouTube or wherever else. And there's the talk, but you're not going to play that. That's like, you want the original thing, right? You want the experience of Shawn Kanungo.
Well, and you want the energy.
Yeah.
Like, there's something that happens in a room when somebody is standing in front of you versus a screen being in front of you.
Yeah.
It's not that you can't enjoy it's like movies versus plays. Both are very enjoyable, but they're different experiences. You can be fully immersed in both of them, right?
Yep.
But they're different. And I think having that human energy and having something in real life is a different experience than watching something on a screen.
So, and I agree, you probably agree with this, that in a world that is increasingly more digital, generative AI, that experience in person is going to have a massive comeback.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look at, people talk about this with the digital and virtual workplaces all the time. It's like, oh, we can be more efficient if we are remote first.
Yep.
If we don't need to make people travel back and forth, we can just have a Zoom call. We can do this. But there is something to being in the same room together and doing a brainstorm.
100%.
There is something towards bumping into somebody in the lunchroom and talking about something random. When I have an idea, I do tend to, again, because I'm a headline expert. Yeah, I think about something to a certain level of depth, and then I get excited about it, and I'm like, okay, this is the idea. But then once I start talking to somebody about it, that's when I actually start to build the idea even more, or realize that, hey, this is not a fully baked idea. I need to go back to the drawing board or abandon it altogether. But there's something from having a coffee with somebody and talking through that idea with them that takes it to the next level. If I just told them over Zoom, first of all, they might not even be listening to me. Second of all, the way that they feed off of my energy and I feed off of theirs is different.
Yep.
So I do think this real life, everything is going to make a comeback for sure. And I think we're going to realize what is appropriate and optimal digitally and what is appropriate and optimal like in person.
Yeah. You know what? By the way, I think this is a great segue to the next piece.
Okay.
Which is this idea that, and I gotta get the stat right, which is the idea that we are in a friendship crisis. That we are in a friendship crisis, and I'm gonna get the stat right here. This stat will blow. I've been meditating on this stat for a very long time. The number of Americans without any friends has surged by 400% since 1990. The number of Americans without any friends has surged by 400% since 1990, which is not too long ago. And I would assume part of the reason is because of digital. I would assume actually the biggest part is because of digital, because of social media, that we are increasingly communicating with on chat. Before it was ICQ, MSN, the evolution, now social media, Facebook, WhatsApp, Discord, and we're not building true friendships. And this is disturbing. I thought the point of life is to have good friends, intimate relationships with others. And I don't know if you're seeing it in your world at all, but I'm definitely seeing that, people are, I run into people all the time and they're like, oh, I'm moving to this Portland. I'm moving here. I'm moving there. I'm like, but what about your friends? Like, aren't you like, that's why I'm actually cemented here in Edmonton is because of friends. People are like, why don't you move to a bigger city? Why don't you move to Toronto, New York, wherever? Because I have friends here. Like, that's important to me. And this stat is just mind blowing to me. So initial reactions on the idea that friendship is a crisis and the stat.
Yeah, it is very staggering, those stats, and very disturbing. But yet at the same time, when I hear it and I think about it, I believe it. I completely believe it. I think, you know, I don't know where it's going to go and how we're going to get through this crisis, but I think all of it's a number of things to me. It is a little bit of the fact that like everyone's kind of got this singular mindset nowadays. Like even think about family structures, right? When you were young, and maybe because we're of immigrant descent, you see all these like multi-generational families living in the same home. Now you see one person living in a home. I'm one of those people. I'm one person in a home. I don't need to be. Then you see next door, there's another one person living in that home. There's two people living in the other one. You look in cars on your drive down the street. Every car has one person in it. The HOV lanes in the US are probably like empty because there's nobody in them because there's not more than one person in any car. So I don't know if it's just social media. I think like even video games, like my sister, I have two nephews, 7 and 9. They love video games. They're like obsessed. They become like little zombies in front of them. But my sister doesn't let them play on individual consoles. Like when they play the Switch, they play together. And so they're not talking to each other on a microphone like Microsoft Live or whatever all those weird things are. They have some element of like communication at least. So I think everything we do is kind of built around individualism, and maybe it's the abundance thing. Maybe it's because everybody can afford their own tablet and everybody can afford their own car and their own house, and we don't have that scarcity mindset anymore where we need to like share things or communally do anything together. I don't know, but
I think the reason is simple. Like digital is so good. It's so addictive, and it blinds us from seeing the importance of like developing like deep, intimate relationships with others. And you know, just like put a phone in front of somebody, and it's like it's just unstoppable, right?
Yeah, like my mom.
Yeah, like and it's funny because if you look at our parents and you look at any generation, they're all addicted to their phone. Even though like my mother is not native to the phone, she's not native to the iPad, but she's still completely addicted to it, just like every other generation. Yeah. So it's just an unstoppable force.
Yeah, I do agree with that, but I also think it's combined with abundance, because if everybody didn't have these devices, if they weren't ubiquitous, if everybody couldn't have all this access all the time, then they would be forced to have more lo-fi, low-cost relationships.
Yeah.
So I think that is still also a part of it.
Do you think that this problem is deeper with men or women?
Oh, I think it's both.
Oh, okay.
It might just be different formats for different genders, but I think it's the same. Yeah.
Because I maybe it's because of the algorithm or whatever. I've been reading a lot about like male loneliness and the fact that more and more men don't have other male friends. And that's
I think that's always been a problem.
Okay.
I think if you look at the way that men form and
have conversations,
sustain, right? It's different than women. Women are a little bit more, group based in everything. And I remember actually Jason Calacanis, I was listening to All In podcast one time, and they were talking about, maybe it was, I don't want to quote that because I think it was a different podcast, but some podcast with a bunch of men as the hosts. They were talking about this idea that...
You talk about every podcast.
I know. Well, the funny thing is it's either All In or Smartless. It was one of those.
Yeah.
But they were talking about the fact that men actually bond more when they go on like road trips. And it's because they don't have to look at each other in the car to be vulnerable and share what they're talking about. Or like when they go for a walk or things like that, where they can actually focus on something else rather than on the other person. Whereas like women are totally comfortable sitting across from each other and having like a deep conversation about whatever. I would argue that I'm somewhere in the middle of both of those. I do kind of like, I think it can be unnerving to share a lot of things when you're like directly looking at someone and kind of being very vulnerable.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. So maybe for men, it's because they already started at a bit of a disadvantage when it comes to building these close relationships. Like I think things are changing again. Everything ebbs and flows and goes from a place of being one extreme to another. And I think with this new generation of boys being raised, I do see a lot of them and the way they interact with their fathers or their uncles or other male figures being a bit different than it was when we were kids. And so I think that's wonderful. I think it will continue to be like that. But it doesn't surprise me that the loneliness and the individuality skews male versus female.
It's funny. It's funny you mention that because this past weekend I went to Canmore with a whole bunch of families. There was like 22 people plus kids, and we separated the girls and the guys to go to the Nordic spa. So the guys all went to the Nordic spa. We were all like, all like almost naked. We're like looking at each other, no phones. And it was the best experience ever, right? Like, it's just like you're experiencing something, you're vulnerable, like you're just, you can't do anything but chat. And I love those experiences. I love going on boys trips. I love doing those things because it's just like, the ability to, there's nothing better for guys to just hang out with each other. I'm sure it's the same thing with girls, but like, man, I love it. It's just, I just think that it soothes my soul to like just be in those bonding experiences with other guys. I don't know why. Yeah,
and I think you're right. The same is for women, but I think we demand it more than men do. So, when I look at a lot of my friends that are married, they still have very active social lives, and they still value their friendships and put a lot of effort into their friendships. It might be different depending on what age their kids are and things like that, of course, but they also demand it. Like, they will tell their husbands, I'm going out with my girlfriends.
Right.
And the men are like, yeah, cool. Well, if you have little kids at home, one of you is staying home. And if one partner has already claimed the night, the other one's home.
Yeah.
And I think if men claim the same type of that social craving, then you'd have to figure it out, right? But that's why I think boys' trips are important. I think girls' trips are equally as important. Yep. But even when you think about when guys go play golf together, like girls, we can do the same thing when we go for dinner, or because we do it more often. It doesn't need to be as long or as extreme of an event. It can happen all the time for us. A little bit more easily than maybe for men.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what the solution is to this crisis, but I believe that it is a massive opportunity. I don't know what it is, like maybe getting more people in person, or just the ability to understand how to converse. Like maybe it's just like more foundational, which is, do you know how to have a conversation with someone else? Like, can you sit down with somebody and go to the spa for 5 hours and have a conversation? Like, I'm just curious with a younger generation to see if they're able to do this. I remember going on a stag a number of years ago, and it was a generation a little bit younger than me, and I was baffled. Like I literally had to go like for a number of dinners and be like, guys, we're on a trip. Like, can you guys drop the phone? Like, I literally like put your phones in the middle of the thing. Otherwise, the person who picks it up has to pay, and it was wild. And I don't know if that's I don't want to disrespect the younger generation, but it's wild to see people not enjoying like 3-4 hours of conversation. I don't know. I enjoy it, but like maybe people are not enjoying it.
I don't know. I do think we're going to see things where people are going to be checking their phones at the door for more things.
Yeah.
I do see people already at family, around the family dinner table saying, hey, this is a no phones night.
Yeah.
Don't bring your phone to the table. And people say it to the parents as much as they say it to the kids.
Yeah.
And I think, maybe you speak about opportunity. Maybe this is an opportunity. I don't want to go down like another controversial path, but maybe this is an opportunity for the school system, right? Like, think about education. Education is becoming democratized and ubiquitous. You can learn anything, anywhere.
Yes.
You don't need to go to school. But what can school offer you that online learning cannot? Social interaction.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe that social interaction, knowing yourself, being able to express your own feelings, all those kinds of things, maybe that becomes the more important purpose of going to school.
I think it always was.
I think so too, but I think they think that it's the learning, right. But really it's not.
Right.
But I guess we're going to start seeing some really interesting research around, this post-pandemic era. Like I always think back to those times when we weren't seeing anybody. And I always think that it was probably the hardest on people that don't have those relationships already formed. Either you're in school, you're in university, you're getting your first job, you don't have a network. Like that. I always think that I'm luckier that I was the age that I was when all that stuff happened, because I still knew how to stay connected to people.
And to that point, this brings up my next topic or concept, which I'm calling intellectual Ozempic. So Ozempic, if you don't know what Ozempic is for the audience, Ozempic is like this like miracle drug that so many people are taking. It was previously used for like people with diabetes, but people are using it to like lose weight, and it's like a miracle drug that people are using. And it's amazing that you can have a pill and then just take it, or I don't know if people are shooting it, whatever you do, and they're losing weight like crazy, and they're getting some amazing benefits out of it. And I'm thinking, today we're just overloaded with information. We're constantly stuffing our minds with useless headline reading that it has no value to our lives. How can we practice a little of intellectual Ozempic and reduce the shit content that's going in our minds and just focus on the things that actually truly matter? So being able to just filter out the things that really matter, because I really believe that you are what you consume, not only from a food perspective, but from a mind perspective. And so if we're constantly feeding ourselves with just garbage, we're going to get fat, not physically, but just we're going to get obese intellectually. So intellectual Ozempic is the idea of just being mindful of what you're putting into your mind. So, whether it's like on that car ride, not playing anything, or whether it's meditating, taking cold showers, whatever it might you might need to do to like get in your own head and be clear, I think is such a game changer.
First of all, I think that headline comment was a dig, and I'm just going to ignore that. Okay.
What headline? Yeah.
Too many headline. But I couldn't even think after that. But no, I 100% agree with you. We're just going to have to start scheduling it in. We're going to have to be regimented. As regimented as we are about anything, we're going to have, this is another form of abstinence and balance that we're going to have to create, and we're going to have to put it in there. Like Twitter is a good example, or X, sorry, now as we're calling it, which I don't even want to talk about that. But when I remember that if I ever look at my Twitter feed of who I'm following, it tends to be a really good snapshot of what I'm interested in at the time.
Yes.
Right? And I kind of go through and do these cleanses of my who I'm following every so often.
Is it that it comes up on your feed and now you become interested? Or are you actively following certain individuals?
I actively will follow people, but then it will for sure bring up more people, and then I'll start following them too. But so it starts to border between like active selection of people that I'm following to then becoming like groupthink. Right? So like, when people are like, my Twitter feed's so negative these days, everything on's negative. Yeah, because you're like, again, like begets like, right? So it just starts bringing up more, and then everyone is kind of on this groupthink train. So you have to like do a cleanse, and you got to reset your list every so often. I think it's the same thing with all your email newsletters or your podcasts or whatever. And so there's this idea of cleansing and getting rid of the ones that are just adding negativity or adding more of the same, whether it's negative or positive. But then it's like scheduling time away. Like I was telling you when I walked in that I just went on a 4-day trip to Victoria, and I didn't take my computer, but my goal was like, I'm going to wake up and do what I feel when I feel. So I'm actually not going to schedule things. And I don't know, anybody that knows me knows I don't know how to do anything if it's not scheduled. It's like ridiculous. And so this idea of like thinking, like taking a minute to think, what do I feel like doing?
Love that.
What do I feel like eating? I don't know. Half the time I don't know. I just like eat whatever's around, or I'm in a routine. So I'm, chicken and vegetables, this and that, whatever, same thing over and over again. So that was a really interesting exercise for me, to go and walk to something and stop along the way at things that piqued my interest that I did not have on my schedule. If I tried to do it for more than 4 days, I would have gone crazy. So you got to like know your boundaries. But I do think we're going to see more of these. Like think about, tour guides.
Deliberate wandering.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
And
love that.
It's like you think about tour guides. People are always giving these like culinary tours and this tour and that tour. There's going to be like digital detox tours.
Yeah.
Right? Where people are going to say, okay, this is like you can only use your phone for an hour a day or 2 hours a day or whatever. And maybe that's an entrepreneurial opportunity for people, is to think about how they can create experiences.
So I've been thinking a lot about, there's all these dummy phones that you can use, and I feel like it hasn't been done well yet. And I feel like there's a massive opportunity in creating the true dummy phone that is kind of like a it's almost a flex too. To me, it is a flex to have a dummy. Like if everybody knows it's a dummy phone, and it can't you can only text or call, like that is a true flex.
Yeah, I know somebody that has one and has always had a dummy phone. They use that old Ericsson. It was like a rectangle,
Yep.
and you just know it just by looking at it what it is. Like there's no smartphone that looks like that. And yeah, he can't be on Twitter because he can't tweet anything. Even his photo quality is so bad. He will take photos on that phone, but the screen is this big.
Right.
You can't see anything. It's like pixelated. You can never upload that anywhere. It just lives on your phone and that's it. And it is interesting. Like it's kind of cool.
I'm talking about like a true dummy phone, like
how dummy?
The old school like cell phone where it's like a brick.
Oh yeah, but it doesn't need to be big just to be dumb. That's inconvenient. How are you going to carry that thing around?
Well, you want to flex it. So that's what I mean. It's like the new flex.
Yeah,
like
but
if you're carrying around a dummy phone, that's a true flex. To me, that is like this person is truly evolved. They don't need the social media stuff. They don't want they just
but that's what I mean by that Ericsson. It's like why do you got to carry a brick when you can carry a Motorola StarTAC, right? Like the Motorola StarTAC was that little black flip one with the antenna. I remember I used to buy colorful antennas. I don't know if you remember that, but like I had a Nokia and I bought a light up antenna.
Yep.
And that was like how you show how cool you are back when I was in university. But the thing is, like, if I had to carry a brick around, where would I put it? I can't wear my, Lululemon crossbody and throw it in there or put it in my pocket or whatever. So I think that's just a bit too far.
No.
Inconvenient.
I think the point is that you put it on the phone, you put it on the table, and you're like, what is that? You put the brick on the table, and it's a flex, and it's utility because it keeps your mind sharp. I actually believe that.
Okay.
Don't make it convenient.
Okay, well, let's see. Let's see if that comes back. Maybe there is an opportunity. I don't know.
I'm gonna work on it. Okay, so this is kind of like a fun concept. I call it the Jay Shetty Effect. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
The Jay Shetty Effect is when you say something to your partner or your friend and they don't internalize it at all. Like you give them some information, they don't internalize it. But but then like 2 months later, they hear a guy with a British accent. He says it in a way more profound way, and now it sinks in. This has happened to me so many times with friends and family where somebody's like, hey, I love this idea. You got to hear this idea. I'm like, yeah, I told you this idea like 3-4 months ago. But it's because somebody with an English accent said it in a more, sexier way, and then it sit with you a little bit more. And I think part of the reason why, I don't know, your family, I don't know what the effect is. Maybe it is the Jay Shetty effect where getting information from somebody that's super close to you will not resonate because I don't know if you know that person or it's like everything that they say, you're just like, whatever. Like you don't internalize it. But if somebody else outside of your sphere or somebody maybe that is coming from a higher status says something, then you're like, oh man. It's the exact reason why people get me to speak at their organizations. The CEO can say the exact same thing as me, but because I'm coming in as a third party, for some reason that's going to resonate a little bit more.
Yeah, I think that's just human nature, right?
Yeah.
I think it's human nature to not listen to the people that are close to you about certain things. It's also kind of the effects of like, the Instagram DMs. How many times do you get the same thing shared to you on Instagram DM that is like saying the exact same thing that you've said already, but now there's like 15 other people saying it on social media. So somebody sends it to you like, this is crazy. And you're like, yeah, I know, I already told you this thing.
Right.
You just don't care. The more somebody hears it from other people, the more they want to listen. You can take it as far as cultural appropriation. Why do you think Gwyneth Paltrow can sell turmeric lattes when my mom and my grandma would make me turmeric lattes growing up all day long, and I never drank them? I thought they were disgusting. I still don't like them when Gwyneth Paltrow makes it, but when she makes it, everybody's like, oh, golden milk, we gotta have this golden milk. My mom, her eyes are like rolled so far up through all this golden milk and all this nonsense because everybody's doing it. But it's just when it's something that is, so close to you, you just kind of want to not really make it. It just loses its validity.
Yeah.
Right? You just need that third party.
And what I've been doing is trying to use this Jay Shetty effect to how do you use it as an advantage, right? So if you want to get a message to somebody that is close to you, what you should do is get somebody else. Tell somebody else what you need to say to that person, and then they will go and say it.
Yeah. Or use a generative AI tool to get someone to say it in an accent, because I actually do think you're onto something with the accent
Yes.
thing, you know, and
Accent, somebody needs to study the accent thing.
100%. And I think that same thing goes for Canadian accents. So I'm on a board
Okay.
in the UK, and they invited me out to speak on something. They're like, hey, we're having this annual dinner or whatever. Can you talk at it? Whatever. It was in 2019. And I was like, what am I going to say that is so profound and interesting? And they weren't saying it as a dig, like this was not an insult, but they're like, well, Faaiza, part of it is that you have a different accent. So you are automatically viewed as a different level of authority.
Wow.
And I thought that was interesting. So maybe there is something to this idea of also needing to have an accent.
Right.
And, you know, maybe like American audiences will listen to a Canadian speak a bit differently, or somebody in Brazil will take something that somebody from the UK says differently, or whatever. It could just be that it's somebody that's saying something in a way that sounds different.
Right. Yeah, no, somebody needs to study that.
Yeah.
I want to see the research study of English accent or other accents in terms of internalizing information. I'm gonna look that up. But what I've been doing, I did this a couple of times with my kids, which is getting another parent.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Tell your
Smart.
kid to something. That because they'll remember it.
Yes.
Like, oh my God, this uncle told me like this. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, because
it'll hit
also they
different.
think that uncle is cool, and they don't necessarily think
Of course,
their dad's
they-
as cool. You know, like
Cool.
it's like the aunt effect too.
Yeah.
I can say anything to my nephews, and they will listen with way more. I've told them since day one, when we sit in Faaiza Kala's car, we do not kick the back of the seat. And guess what? They don't kick the back of the seat.
Wow.
But in their parents' car, the back of the seat looks like it just went through like some sort of, you know, swampland because of their feet and kicking and food that they throw at it and whatever they do. It's just, you just need a different person.
You need a different person, and you know what? Maybe the business idea is that, hey, listen, if you want to contact me, if you want to hire me to just tell your kid something,
Exactly.
I will. You know, it's the new Cameo. It's like,
Yeah, just send me what you need me to say, and I'll
Yeah.
say it back and send it to you.
It's-
And guess what? I have generative AI layer to me, so I can say it in any accent that you want, any language that you want.
I think it's a great idea.
Whatever you want.
So the Jay Shetty Effect. Okay, last concept before we get into we do this thing where we kind of get into news a little bit at the end.
Oh God, I don't like news.
Oh,
I don't know it.
These news pieces you'll definitely resonate with. But the last piece is what I call the Kardashian trick. Over the years, I've had more appreciation and admiration for the Kardashians, particularly Kim, because I like to look at the longevity. And to me, Kim Kardashian started her career in a very classless way. We all know how she started. But to see where she is now, she is a global icon. She's an icon. Fashion, business, entrepreneurship, social advocacy. Like, if you actually look back and look at this trajectory, it is actually remarkable. And what she's done with Skims, the business that she's building, it's really inspiring to see. The Kardashian Trick. And I know the Kardashians are a very like controversial group, or, you know, people look what they're doing with whatever women and you know, are they a good role model, blah, blah, blah. I think they're a phenomenal role model. Look at how they've turned their entire lives and their narrative. I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of the Kardashians.
Okay, wow.
Yes. First of all, I've watched the show forever. Okay. I think there's a couple of interesting things when you look at Kim specifically. She has always, her and Kris are very interesting. So nobody talks enough about Kris Kardashian,
Right.
Kim's mom. She is so smart, so calculated, such a mastermind. And because Kim has a similar work ethic and maybe a different relationship with her mom than some of the other Kardashians, and even thinking about the fact that she kind of was the first in the family to latch on to any of the ideas that Kris had around, you know, fame and all this, they are amazing because, first of all, they took advantage of all the access that they had. They had access to celebrities all the time, even when they weren't celebrities. They had access to people with influence, people with money, all these things. They were the first to turn the camera on themselves,
Yes.
even in social media, knowing that that comes with a price, but it also comes with an opportunity. And so I think when you look at it, they they were willing to make the sacrifices to take advantage of the opportunities. And there probably are a lot of sacrifices they've had to make when it comes to privacy, safety, all those things. But the other thing is that, like, you know, Kim, when she first started out there, how old was she? 16, 17, I don't know, whatever.
Well, she was Paris Hilton's like side, like right hand.
She was her
buddy.
assistant, and then
stylist.
best friend, or
Yeah.
And I'll say it like this because I don't know if they really were best friends or if it was for the cameras or whatever. But that was in high school, I think.
I mean, yeah,
Maybe even before. Maybe, yeah. And now Kim is in her 40s. So if you think about her evolution, I mean, we've all evolved, right? But as she's evolved, she's had more and more and more access to things, to money, to people. And she's smart enough to leverage all of those things, as we all should. And so for people to look at her now and say, well, she's just taking advantage of all the things that she's been given everything. No way. There's a ton of people that are in her position that started where she did that are not where she is right now. Right?
100%.
So I have huge respect for the Kardashian.
Me, it's like, I have massive respect for longevity, excellence in the game. Another person is Drake, you know, to be on top for this long. You look at LeBron. You know, these people have been on top for so long. And Kim has been on top for so long.
Yeah.
And you have to give kudos to that. And I think she was very smart in understanding that, and I don't think 90% of the world has figured this out yet, that the integration between content and commerce is getting tighter and tighter. And the more that she doubles down on being a great content creator, whether it's through the show, whether it's through social media, she's able to sell things on the back of that. And I think part of the reason why you see a lot of these streaming platforms, excuse me, or like Disney doing poorly is because they did not understand how important media is free, right? But what are you attaching in next to it? Like, how are you putting a product right next to it to sell that? And I think Kim had realized very early on that I'm actually in the product game. I'm not just in this social media game.
100%.
And now we're starting to see it. Now we're starting to see, Logan Paul, KSI, Prime. Now we're starting to see Mr. Beast, Feastables. Like, we're seeing that content commerce connection, and the creators are the next entrepreneurs.
100%, because it's about captive audience, right?
Yeah.
And it's to the point before that you made around buying media. Like, if you think about it, the only way you're going to sell something to someone is if someone is paying attention. So if you've spent your time building an audience of 100 million people or billions of people or whatever the number is, then the probability of selling to them is quite high. And the percentage of people that you need to sell to is actually very low to make money. And a great example of this is Kylie Kardashian, or Kylie Jenner.
Yep.
Kylie Jenner caught on to this very quickly, looking at what Kim was doing. And because she didn't have to go through all the learning curves and she's of a different generation, she was able to do this quicker with Kylie Cosmetics. But that's what she did. She built up an audience. She sold a product. She crashed Shopify on day one of launching that. And it's because there were enough eyeballs paying attention all at the same time. And that, to me, is genius.
Totally. So, and I think you're going to see more and more of this. You're going to see as media becomes more free. I believe that media businesses will be smaller, but every media business will have a content arm to it, like a product arm. They're selling something.
Well, do you follow Midday Squares?
I follow them on. I haven't tried it, but
it's a good product.
Is it a good product?
Yes, this is not going to be as...
I follow them on LinkedIn and stuff. And by the way, I know Kim gave them a shout out too.
Yeah, and I was going to say that my shout out is not going to do anything for them the way Kim's shout out will do. But I have eaten the product. I like it. It's a great product. But more importantly, the founding team, they always say this. They're like, we are not a we're a media company.
Yeah.
And they follow the music industry playbook. They say we are a media company and our media is chocolate.
Yeah.
And they're right. They could be selling anything. Even the way they make their TikTok videos and things like that, they really let you behind the lens.
And they put a lot of effort into.
And they put a lot of effort. If you think about who's on their team, they probably skew more heavily on the content side than any of their competitors
Which is incredible.
do. It is incredible. They have somebody following them around all the time with video cameras and things like that. And you just kind of need to.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you do the same. You invest a lot in content and making sure that you're capturing everything that you need to capture so that you can turn it into something at a later date, because you can't go back and recreate those moments.
No.
Once they're done, they're done.
And that's why I massive respect for what they're doing, obviously following them, not only because they're Canadian, but they're Canadian, right?
Yeah, they are. They're from Montreal.
Yeah, that's what I thought. But it's really cool. Really cool. That's why I'm doubling down on content. That's why I'm tripling down. That's why I'm doing this podcast. That's why I'm doing all this stuff. So Kardashian Trick, I'm really impressed. Now, this is the part, by the way, this is the part of the pod where we just drop some news, just your quick takes on some of the news. So first one, right out of the gate, just dropped today, Justin Trudeau divorcing or separating. Justin Trudeau separating from Sophie. Obviously, listen, it's a divorce. Want to respect their family and their kids. But Justin's on the market right now. Who do you think would be a good replacement for Sophie? You think Kim would try to slide in there? Like,
no.
she's already conquered most of the world. Do you think she would get in there?
Hell no, because you can't have two superstars.
Well,
You know what I
Kanye and Kim.
Well, they didn't work,
Okay.
right?
Who is Justin Trudeau's next target?
Ooh, that's such a good question.
Yeah, is it too early to mention?
It's way too early. And
is it inappropriate of our?
I don't think it's inappropriate.
Prime Minister, like, he's an eligible bachelor, that who he should get.
No, but going back to the Kim Kardashian thing, she played a trick on her mom, saying that she was going on The Bachelor, the Bachelorette. She was going to be the new
Right.
Bachelorette. It would be cool to see him as the Bachelor.
Whoa,
That could be very interesting.
Trudeau as the Bachelor.
Yeah, they're doing a Golden Bachelor. Why can't they do a head of state Bachelor?
Wow.
Right?
Listen, Justin, if you're watching this, if you want to get your polling up, you gotta get on The Bachelor.
Yeah, and I think Hinge is going to have to start figuring out a verification badge similar to to Instagram and Twitter and stuff, because now everybody's going to be creating Justin Trudeau profiles.
Wow. Well, let me give you the next, I think the next great pickup for Justin Trudeau, next wife, next girlfriend, is Avril Lavigne, Canadian superstar, just broke up with Tyga. So I think she's on the market. And skater girl, Justin Trudeau, I think it's a win.
If she can make it work with Chad Kruger at some point, then I think she can make it work with Justin Trudeau.
Wow, there you go. Shots at Chad Kruger. Okay, so you mentioned that you didn't like Elon going from Twitter to X. You said don't even start me on that. I'm here to ask why.
So I don't actually really care if he changes it to whatever he wants to change it to. I just think, now what are we supposed to say instead of saying I tweeted? I X'd?
Zeeted.
Oh, is it zeeted?
I don't know.
Oh, okay. Because I think my nephews say that all the time. No, they say yeet.
Yeet.
I don't know what that is.
I don't know what that is either.
Anyway, I just think that we haven't thought through the whole vernacular around the new X. And if he's going to do things like that, he should really think it through and give us the language that we're going to be using throughout. That's the only annoying thing to me.
What I get annoyed about is that Elon has become so divisive. And I'm not like an Elon bro. I don't own a Tesla. I'm not an Elon bro, but I find it really hilarious that people are so anti-Elon there, and they still don't get off Twitter. Like, they still don't get off X. Elon has done so much for our world. Yes, he's not a great person, or he's like weird, he's eccentric. Yeah, I agree. He's not. He's an eccentric billionaire. He's a weirdo. But we cannot deny what he's done for the world, whether it's energy, the electrification. Like, you talk to anybody in the electric industry, they actually appreciate what Elon has done for that industry and for the climate. I'm not even talking about Tesla or I'm like Starlink? No. Hyperloop. What's the SpaceX?
SpaceX.
Look what he's doing with Starlink. Like, the reason why people in rural Alberta and other places can get access to the internet is because of Elon.
Yeah, totally.
And I don't think that we appreciate the impact that he's made on the world. Who cares if he's changing Twitter to X? Who cares if he's saying stuff on Twitter that you don't like? He's changing the world. And I don't get all the Elon hate all the time.
Well, it's just easy. Everyone loves to hate a common enemy, right? For a while, it was Mark Zuckerberg.
Right.
So I think we always just need an enemy,
right,
a common enemy for us to all rally around. And I'm the same as you. I don't really care one way or another. Like, I don't think anything that he's doing needs to be so divisive. I think it's just like, yeah, he's trying new things, and new things are always going to be weird or unacceptable or whatever. The one thing I don't really like, and I don't think he's the only person doing this, so this is not my way of saying that Elon Musk must be stopped or anything like that. But I do think sometimes when new CEOs come in and they make, or when leaders are a little bit too, not even eccentric, but a little bit, they change their minds too often, or they pivot too quickly. I can think of companies in Edmonton that do this, so they don't have to be huge. What happens, unfortunately, is that a lot of people suffer because people get fired really quickly. And people, like, the stability of the organization changes, and there's a lot of people depending on that stability. So I think that's the only sad part about all companies that are a little bit too quick to make decisions that affect the whole company.
But I think in this case, Elon did the right thing, which was, listen, he let go of all these people at Twitter, yet the product still remains.
Yeah,
I mean, you could say it remains. You could say that it's going down, but for the most part, it's still standing.
Yeah.
It's still standing. And what he showed to every single tech company is that, by the way, you don't need this much fat. And to be honest with you, if I own a company, I want to make sure that I'm as innovative as possible, but also as efficient as possible, as lean as possible. And I think that's what he showed.
No, that part I agree with. And I think everybody should do that. I think when you just keep changing direction. So for example, I saw a LinkedIn post of a guy that was hired at X for 2.5 weeks to build the new branding and then fired because the branding part was done. Right. So I think it's things like that I disagree with.
That. Yeah.
And that's agree. Because it's like people are depending on you for their livelihood. I think being efficient, trimming the fat, all those things that companies need to do. I definitely think that I'm sure most companies operate with a lot of people that they don't need just because they get a bit lazy about how they're creating their organizations. So that part is important. But I think when it happens too quickly and too often, then the problem is also a management issue with not properly designing your organization.
I agree with that. Well, listen, wow. We talked about a whole bunch of different concepts, dangerous ideas for sure. I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you, Shawn. I really appreciate it.
It was a pleasure. It was an honor for you to have you. And listen, if you're listening to this, Dangerous Ideas, we break down concepts and frameworks that will change your life. We drop every single week. This was episode 13. So follow Faaiza. Where can people follow you at, by the way?
Everywhere. I'm Faaiza Ramji. So
on X too.
On X, on Instagram. I don't have the blue check mark anywhere. So that's where you can find me.
Okay, amazing. Thanks, guys. Dangerous Ideas.